Well, hooray for Denmark. Not only does this nation have a face mask ban in place, but unlike some other countries with similar laws, it would appear that Denmark is actually serious about enforcing this prohibition. Last week, Danish police did what they are supposed to do. They enforced the law. Normally, stating something so benign would be about as newsworthy as reporting, oh, I don't know, that there's an excess of salt water in the Pacific. But because this arrest involved an aspect of Islamic culture, well, it was time for the usual suspects to break into a fevered sweat. Here's the deal. In May, Denmark's parliament approved its anti-face mask law, which more or less targets the burqa and the niqab. And on August 1st, the Danish law came into effect. And a few days later, police were called to a shopping center north of Copenhagen regarding a 28-year-old woman who was wearing the Islamic face-concealing veil. She was told to either remove it or leave the public space. She chose the latter, but not before she was informed she'd be receiving a fine in the mail for 1,000 kroner, or about 200 Canadian dollars. Now, it's heartwarming to see Danes take back their country and take a stand against cultural suicide. After all, I had deep concerns that, like some other nations with burqa and niqab bans, Denmark wouldn't be serious about the actual enforcement of such a ban. My fear that Denmark was going to wimp out on actually charging violators goes back to a photograph published a while back. Here it is, folks, reproduced in The Guardian. Now, as you can see, a Muslim protester who is going cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs about the incoming new law is tearfully hugging a police officer. It's really a stunning image, the idea that a member of law enforcement would hug a person who is openly showing her disapproval for an upcoming law of the land. Why wasn't this police officer suspended, by the way? I mean, if she's going to side with those who will soon be carrying out criminal acts, then that is both egregious and unethical. In any event, I may have been too quick to judge, as the police last week issued a fine to the Muslim woman who was flagrantly disobeying the new face mask law. Oh, and how I would relish it if our great Dominion, as opposed to just Quebec, followed the Danes' lead and banned this hideous haberdashery from the public square too. Hey, you want to wear such a costume at home? Okay, or at the mosque, no problem, fine by me. You want to go out in public as though it's Halloween 365 days a year? Sorry, honey, you're in a Western nation with Western values. Indeed, Danish Justice Minister Søren Pape Poulsen has previously noted, quote, "It is incompatible with the values in Danish society and disrespectful to the community to keep one's face hidden when meeting each other in public spaces," end quote. And you know, he's right. My fundamental issue with not being able to recognize someone in public is that it goes against one of the freedoms we so cherish in the West. The reason why we don't have checkpoints at every intersection with guards demanding our identification papers is that we can all freely identify one another, given that we are not covering our faces. If one person wears a facial concealment, that person will enjoy an inherent advantage should there be any altercation. Little wonder, by the way, that in recent years we have seen numerous stories of males carrying out crimes while donned in burqas, a politically correct method of hiding in plain sight. As well, please spare me any of the de rigueur cultural sensitivity claptrap that is so inherent to this issue. Many Islamic scholars argue that there's nothing, in fact, in the Quran that dictates Muslim females must wear such garb. And even if there were such a mandate, I would point to the fact that Denmark follows Danish law, not Sharia law. But already the predictable cries of Islamophobia are emanating from the Islamists and their ever so useful idiots in the media party. In fact, check out this article by Sigal Samuel in The Atlantic. In condemning the Danish law, Samuel interviews Sabina, a 21-year-old Muslim who lives in Copenhagen and wears the niqab. Says Sabina, quote, "The niqab is a huge part of my identity," end quote. Wow, poor Miss Samuel. She fails to comprehend the perverse irony of that statement, that a shroud-like fabric making Sabina unidentifiable is actually a huge part of her identity. Yeah, you've come a long way, baby. Entomb yourself by making yourself less human and more invisible. And somehow this is part and parcel of an identity worth praising? What a couple of kooks. Sorry, but as former French President Nicolas Sarkozy once opined on this issue, quote, "It is a question of freedom and of woman's dignity. The burqa is not a religious sign. It is a sign of the subjugation of the submission of woman," end quote. How odd that a man makes such a statement, whereas the Atlantic's Sigal Samuel, who I shall presume is a feminist, chickens out when it comes to going to bat for the sisterhood for, I don't know, fear of being called culturally insensitive. Nice. In the final analysis, the law is the law. It takes your chances, you pay the consequences. In other words, when it comes to clothing choices in countries such as Denmark, drop the stylized Glad garbage bag and embrace that old adage of when in Rome, or as the case may be, when in Copenhagen. For the Rebel.media, I'm David the Menzoid Menzies. Hey folks, the Rebel has a new app. Please download that app and take the Rebel with you wherever you go.